likes it to the channel, which I love, by the way. Thank you very much. I think it'll be worth the read. I was 7 years old when my mom, a single mother, moved us from Louisiana to Texas in the summer of 1998 for a fresh start. I was very excited for the move because we would be living near my favorite aunt, and also because it would be the first time that I would be attending a public school once the summer was over. We stayed with my aunt while my mom found work and also searched for a place for us to live, which she quickly found both. We packed up the few belongings that we had, along with a mattress that my mom had found secondhand. We loaded everything up in her little black pickup truck, and we hit the road to our new place. It wasn't too far away from where my aunt lived, but as we drove, I noticed that we were driving further away from the suburban area that she lived in, and we were going more towards a rural, wooded area. Time seemed to pass by so slowly as we drove deeper and deeper into the woods. Finally, my mom told me that we were approaching our new home. I reached my head up just a little bit to get a better view, and I saw 3 small trailers just sitting off the side of the highway that were neatly tucked into the surrounding woods. They seemed to be almost perfectly positioned, with the main trailer sitting right in front of the road and the other 2 on either side, right behind this main one, almost forming a triangle of sorts. I looked to either side of us, ahead as well as behind us, to see if there were any other trailers or homes. And to my surprise, there wasn't. There was just these 3 small white trailers sitting in the woods. Again, I was used to this type of thing, used to this type of setting, so it didn't alarm me too much, to be honest. Only slightly disappointed that we wouldn't be closer to the city. She parked the truck just in front of the main trailer, and as we got out, I asked if there was anyone else living in the other 2 behind us. She said, quote, "No, not yet, as far as I know," which I felt was a little strange, but being 7 years old, I didn't really put much thought into it. She went ahead of me to open the trailer door as I stayed behind, gathering some boxes back from the pickup. From the back of the pickup. Sorry, I keep moving words around. She came back and scrambled and struggled outside. I yelled at her, "You don't understand. We cannot stay here. It's not safe." At this point, I was full on panicking and crying. She was obviously frustrated, brought in the rest of the boxes quickly, and then told me to get back into the truck. From there, we started heading back towards my aunt's house. As we drove, she continued to question me on why I thought it wasn't safe and what made me say those things. And I told her, I can't explain it, but there were bad things in there. Bad things that I saw. She stayed quiet the rest of the way, and by this point, it was already late evening, so she told my aunt that we would just stay the night and pick back up the following day because I was so upset and giving her a hard time with the move. As they talked outside on my aunt's front patio, a lady approached me from the house across the street. She walked straight up to my mom and she put her hand on her shoulder. kids do, and I saw a very large stairwell. Right above the first flight of steps hung a giant painted portrait of an older woman with gray hair. She was dressed in what appeared to be a very fancy dress. I felt the urge to walk up the stairs and continue looking around, but I made it up only 3 steps before the woman shouted, "Don't go up there." This obviously startled me, and my aunt ran, grabbed my hand to bring me back into the kitchen area where they had been talking, and she scolded me a little. She then asked the woman if she could use her restroom before we leave, and the woman agreed. She brought her over to the restroom, and as she did, I noticed a picture of a little girl with black hair sitting on the shelf just nearby. I walked over to the photo and I stared at it. The woman then walked up behind me and I asked her, "Who is this?" She replied, "She's my daughter." I asked where she was, and the woman stated that she was at school. I knew that this couldn't be true because it was the middle of summer break. What? Out of nowhere, the woman said, quote, "She likes to sleep in the closet," unquote. Of course, I asked her why her daughter liked sleeping in the closet, not understanding why she was telling me this. She then said, ominously, quote, "She's afraid of my mother, her grandmother. Do you want to see?" Unquote. Excuse me. As I began to open my mouth to say yes, my aunt came out from the bathroom stating that we were going to head out. The woman went over to my aunt and she handed over the keys and asked about her mom because she thought she was going to give the keys directly to her. The woman then stated that her mother had been in the hospital, which is why she couldn't be there. My aunt didn't put much thought into it, grabbed my hand, and we headed out the door. I watched behind as we walked to the car, all the while the woman stood in the entranceway with a smile, never unlocking eyes with me. My aunt said goodbye and thank you from the distance, and the woman nodded and then said, quote, "Bye, Lena," unquote. We drove off, and I asked my aunt, how did she know my name? And my aunt was just as perplexed as I was because she had not mentioned my name. But we shrugged it off and went home. After this, the lady who lived across from my aunt actually ended up moving out and rented out her home to us. So we were very lucky to live right across the street from my aunt. I, of course, moved on, mom spoke with the lady whose home we were renting, and she told my mom that she had found out that those same 3 trailers had mysteriously caught fire and burned down. No one had been living in them, and the police had no explanation on how or why the fire caught on. To this day, those questions have never been solved. I'm now 33, and this event still sticks with me like it was yesterday. And all I can wonder is if had we moved in, would we have been in that trailer when they caught on fire? It's creepy. I think I've said it here before, but when I was little, I had obviously a very different experience, but I did experience what I thought was my blanket being like ripped off of me while I was asleep, and it like woke me up from a deep, deep sleep, and I don't know what that was. should be mentioned that my cousin, who was 6 years older than I was 13 at the time, had been playing with spiritual items and tools that she had no business touching, particularly since she had no idea how to protect herself or her home. I believe now that she unintentionally invited something in. We continued down the hall to the game room, but as we approached the closet on our right, the temperature of the room noticeably dropped. Goose prickles covered my arms, but worse was the feeling in my stomach. I suddenly felt like someone was grabbing my gut with an iron hand, and I could not bring myself to pass the closet. The doors were barely ajar. My eyes locked onto it, and I felt like my body was paralyzed with fear. My sister, cousin, and friend all kept trying to get me to go into the game room, but whatever was in front of the closet, whatever was in front of me, it felt malicious, evil, and hungry. I refused vehemently, and I ended up leaving. I stomped down the stairs and I walked the 300 yards back to my grandparents' house. Not understanding because